Today's lesson is about Joseph, and this is an introduction to a series that the pastors are going to be doing on the life of Joseph, and it's called Joseph, God and Suffering. So we're going to be talking a little bit today about what Joseph's life was like. They'll be getting into a lot more details in the weeks to come. So Joseph's family sort of was a messed up family. So that begs a question, can God use us if we're messed up? Can God use messed up ordinary people whose families are jealous and bitter and angry with each other? Is it possible that God can use people like that? Well, let's look at Joseph's life a little bit today, and then in the weeks to come, you'll hear more about that. So Joseph's family started with his father Jacob, and Jacob married several wives and had lots and lots of kids. In fact, Joseph in this picture is the little baby in the middle, and he had lots of brothers. And as you can imagine, when you have lots of brothers, there's lots of fighting and bickering and anger and jealousy, and all of that existed in Joseph's family. His family was pretty messed up. Let's start by reading Genesis chapter 37. Remember, Genesis is in the Old Testament. It's the first book of the Bible. We're reading starting with verse 2. Here's the story of the family line of Jacob. Joseph was a young man. He was 17 years old. Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other sons. That's because Joseph had been born to him when he was old. Jacob made him a beautiful robe. Joseph's brothers saw that his father loved him more than any of them, so they hated Joseph. They couldn't even speak one kind word to him. Can you imagine what that would be like? Joseph was obviously the favorite son. His father loved him more than anyone else in the family, and Joseph's brothers knew that. And they were angry with him and jealous with him. They couldn't even speak one kind word. Can you imagine what that would be like to live in a family like that? How could God possibly use Joseph when his family was so messed up? Well, if we keep going through Joseph's story and follow through Genesis 37, Joseph has two dreams. In those dreams, he dreams that his family bows down and worships him. And so he tells his father and his brothers that. And if we go to Genesis 37, verse 10, it says, he told his father as well as his brothers. And then his father rebuked him, and he said, what about this dream that you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers really do that? Will we really come and bow down to the ground in front of you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept his dreams in mind. So this is the second time we hear that Joseph's brothers were very jealous of him, and they didn't like him very much. They did mean things to him, and as we find out in the rest of the story, they actually sold him as a slave and lied to his father and said that he had been killed. Can you imagine a family like that? Joseph lived through so many ups and downs, and through all of those ups and downs, God was with him. God knew exactly what that was going to look like in his life. He knew about the decisions that his brothers would make. He knew all of the anger and bitterness that existed in his family. And yet God still chose to use Joseph. In fact, God used him in a really big way. And if you follow through the story of Joseph, you'll find out that God uses Joseph to save the entire nation of Israel. Can you imagine that? One man who comes from a messed up family that saves an entire nation. It's a pretty exciting story, and if you've never read this, I would encourage your family to read through the story of Joseph this week. So it's kind of like a puzzle. If I handed you this puzzle, and in this puzzle there's a box filled with pieces, and I said, go ahead and put this puzzle together, would you be able to do that? You'd probably ask, well, can I see the picture of what that looks like? What if I said no? What if I said, no, I want you to put this puzzle together just like this without knowing what it's going to look like in the end? That's kind of what our lives are like. That's what Joseph felt like. He saw all of these pieces of his life, and he didn't know how any of them would fit together. And eventually you're able to put together the border and maybe find some of the pieces that fit, but it's really hard sometimes when you're seeing all the pieces of your life and you don't know what God's going to do with that. And see, the difference is that we see all of those tiny pieces, but God sees the final picture. God knows exactly what your life is going to look like. He knows exactly how he's going to use all of those mixed up, messed up pieces to form something really beautiful. And it's amazing when we read through Joseph's story and we learn about all the suffering that he went through, how he lived in prison, he was forgotten, people overlooked him and did mean things to him. Can you imagine what that would be like to live through that? Some of you probably have. In our lives, we have really bad things that happen sometimes, and we make bad decisions and bad choices, and there are consequences because of that. The amazing thing is that God can use that. And here's what I want you to remember today. I want you to remember that God is good all the time, and all the time, God is good. Boy, that's really hard to say sometimes. God is good all the time, no matter what happens. No matter if someone that we're close to dies or if something bad happens in our family, maybe you have to move or your parent loses their job, or maybe one of your brothers or sisters is really mean to you, or maybe something happens at school that you don't like and you don't want to go back again. It's really hard on those days to say, God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. But that's what I want you to remember. And that's what the story of Joseph teaches us. It teaches us that in this world there are going to be bad things that happen, but God can still use that. And God has a purpose and a plan for your life that you may not even understand until the very end, when you look back and you say, wow, God did a really amazing thing. So be encouraged today. Don't forget that. And as you're sitting and talking with your family today, talk about some of those ups and downs that have happened. Parents, don't be afraid to share with your kids about some difficult things that you've had to live through and how you see God working in your family and God working through those difficult times. The story of Joseph is a great reminder of that, and I'm looking forward to the next couple weeks of hearing what the pastors are going to talk about.
Thanks for joining us for Family Worship Time. To complete all 3 parts of our family worship, go to the Forged and Refined website to find some questions to discuss as a family and a song to sing together.